All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for attending. I know that you have a lot of different options for master classes at this exact same time, so the fact that you're here, it makes us happy, so we thank you for attending this session with us. So my name is Josue Fontanez. I'm in product marketing covering Workspace ONE, and my counterpart.
This is Camilo, Lotero. I'm part of the technical marketing team at VMware, covering mainly identity products.
Yeah, so we're going to be covering something that is quite different in this space, and it's this idea that we're pushing forward at VMware that to really deliver what we call secure digital workspaces really requires the unification of identity management and mobility management, which we call Workspace ONE. So before we kind of dive a little bit deeper into this particular topic, just with a show of hands, how many of you already know what Workspace ONE is? All right, it's decent. That's good. That's good. So what we have kind of planned for you today, hopefully you could attend one, if not two, if not three of our master classes, but they're really kind of designed to start at the top to give that high-level view of what is Workspace ONE, why is it so important, or why does VMware at least think it's so important to bring these two technologies together. Then we're going to go a little bit deeper. Camilo has a session focused on the security aspects of Workspace ONE. And then finally, Vikas and Andrew are going to be covering how we think about Office 365, which when we go out and talk to customers, it's one of the biggest projects that we see that are out there. So having said that, to kind of set a little bit of context, I know you guys have seen a lot of these context slides probably already in your sessions. But when we think about where customers have been over the past 10 years, we've kind of seen their focus has really been around Active Directory. And Active Directory was not only the repository for users, but also for policy as well. But we've seen a lot of change over the last 10 or 20 years. Before, all I thought about was Windows apps. All I thought about were employees that were going to access resources within my corporate environment. And really, any type of machine that was going to access the network, for the most part, they were joined to the domain. So as an IT person, I had a really kind of strict control of what was going on in the organization. Having said that, that has now changed. We're seeing that many organizations really want to think of policy as separate from the Active Directory infrastructure. Now the apps that we see, for the most part, are not even Windows apps. We see native mobile apps, SaaS apps, virtualized applications. A lot of the user management we've seen is trying to get out of the hands of IT and into the hands of HR, which often knows more about the employees and what they should have access to than IT. And then lastly, one of the things that we see is the devices themselves have changed. The majority are not even Windows devices anymore. And to go along with that, the types of end users that we see has also changed. So now, in that world where IT only thought about employees, well, now they got to think about, all right, contractors need to access corporate resources. I have, contingent staff, seasonal employees that come in and do some work. I have even sometimes customers that are going to be logging into my network. The devices that they're coming in from are a lot broader than before. And then finally, the use cases in which they're going to work under has changed. No longer can I only think about that Windows machine that's tied to the domain and I control everything on it. Now users are coming in with their personal devices, whether they purchased it or the organization provided some funding for them to purchase it. They may have light levels of management that have been installed by the organization, or perhaps a further lockdown type of asset. But a single end user can actually have devices that span any of those. For example, my phone, I've decided, hey, I'm not going to install complete management on my phone, but I have an iPad that has management on it, and obviously my Mac is managed as well. So as organizations kind of really think about, okay, how do I put this all together, I would say the biggest challenge that they have is, how do I enable the right levels of security and usability? And I kind of think of the example of the front door to our house or to our apartment. I would say most of us have, maybe one key to access our door. If security was our number one priority, we would have 12 different keys and 12 different locks on that door. But we're concerned about usability, right? We don't want to take the time, anytime we want to open that door to our house, to take out 12 different keys and use them, right? So there's this really tight, balance that has to be made with regards to security and usability. And the reason why that's so important for VMware is, for us, we think, okay, we know that employees and all these different types of end users, contractors, et cetera, they need access to corporate resources. But having said that, while it's important to provide IT all of the security and control capabilities to make sure that the organization is kept secure, at the same time, we want to balance and make sure that accessing those resources is just done in an easy way. So throughout all of our end user applications and capabilities that we have within Workspace ONE, that consumer level of simplicity is a big piece of that. So we're actually going to be showing you today, kind of why we think identity management and mobility management are so important in order to deliver on that promise. And actually, Camilo also has a demo, a live demo, where we'll kind of go through some of the capabilities that make that happen. But as we think about Workspace ONE, really, one of the reasons why we ask, well, are you familiar with Workspace ONE? And I would say the majority say not really. And the reason for that is Workspace ONE is a brand new offering, brand new in the sense that it came out early last year. And really what we've done is, the brand that you're probably most familiar with is AirWatch, which is a company that was acquired by VMware several years back. And that technology really provides a powerful platform on which Workspace ONE is built. So with Workspace ONE, we're taking all of the capabilities that you're familiar with AirWatch, mobile device management, mobility management, endpoint management, and then technologies that we've had in-house in VMware Identity Manager as our identity management stack, and really are delivering a platform that enables secure access to corporate resources. So regardless of the type of application that you're trying to enable access to by your end users, we're providing identity management and mobility management together to not only provide security and control, but to also make it easy from an end user perspective. So how do we kind of do that? Well, as we think about, okay, I want to secure the data that they're going to get access to. I want to make sure that devices are secure as well, but I also want to make sure that the user has the capabilities that they need. So what I want to do in the rest of this presentation is really go through 5 kind of different areas that will show you why bringing identity management and mobility management together kind of deliver on that promise. So first off, let's go through OneTouch Mobile SSO. I think one of the things that's really interesting is we're at Cloud Identity Summit. I know there's probably some vendors that are in the room right now. Everyone talks about SSO. But what is SSO from an end user perspective? People think SSO is, oh, you have a single username and password. That may be fine. I have a single username and password. But if on my device, and I need to access 12 different applications on my device, am I entering that single username and password 12 times? So great, you've given me a single username and password, but from a usability perspective, what's the end user experience of accessing all of my applications? So with Workspace ONE, one of the things that we've really put a lot of focus and investment is something that we call OneTouch Mobile Single Sign-On. Sometimes we call it passwordless sign-on experience. And really the idea is that as an end user, I need to access all of these different types of applications. Those applications could be native mobile apps. They could be internally developed mobile apps that the enterprise has chosen to develop and deploy to their end users. They could be applications that are accessed through the browser. They could also be applications that are virtualized applications like a virtual desktop or a hosted application delivered by Horizon or Citrix. But the idea is that regardless of the type of application that I want to access, I want a really simple sign-on experience that gets me into those applications. And the way we've done that is really by bringing identity management and mobility management together. The idea is that when we bring those two technologies together, one of the things that it gives me the ability to identify the user, but I can now use AirWatch, install a certificate on the device that now establishes trust for that device. I know that device is trusted, and I've also installed a profile on the device that allows me to manage it and understand its status. Now, obviously with AirWatch, many folks know AirWatch as that ability to manage a device. But when we think about usability, this is where it really gets interesting, because now by installing that certificate, I can now use that certificate to authenticate the end user to all of those applications that they need to access. So now that experience that perhaps people used to have where they were entering that single username and password a dozen times, that experience is gone. They're using that certificate to authenticate into their various different applications, and they get a passwordless experience. And one of the things that's amazing about that experience is when we demo that, when we show someone, hey, I'm going to launch Salesforce, or hey, I'm going to launch a web browser type application, or I'm going to launch a internally developed mobile application, and they never see that password prompt, that's when their ears perk up. And they see, okay, now I get it. So when you talk about single sign-on, it's different than perhaps how others in the industry talk about single sign-on, because we're really focused on that end user experience. Let me go to the second area, which is around that unified catalog. And when we talk about catalog, it's obviously how do I access all of the different types of applications that I have in my environment. But one of the challenges is that there are various catalog types of solutions in the marketplace today. But it's always important to ask, what type of applications can I get access to in that catalog? So for example, if on my mobile device, can I get access and have a truly seamless single sign-on experience straight into a virtual desktop or a hosted application? So our goal with this unified catalog is regardless of the type of application that you're trying to access, built internally, built by a third party, whether it's a web app or a modern Windows app, provide that really unified experience where I could get access to all of those different types of applications. And we're continuing to invest in this catalog, this end user experience. We actually just released Workspace ONE 3.0, which is kind of that new application and browser experience to access all of these different types of applications. I would encourage you, if you get a chance, come to the demo. We could actually show you this new application experience and some of the things that we've done. But net result is all of the different types of applications that a end user would need to get access to. Let's go to the third area, adaptive management. One of the things that I showed earlier on is the fact that in an enterprise, there's all of these different types of users, devices, and levels of management of the device. How many of you, perhaps, whether it's with AirWatch or another mobility management technology, does your organization require your device to be managed to access corporate resources? Some of you, yeah, quite a few of you. And why is that? Well, your organization wants to make sure that your device is secure, right? That's the end result of it. It's almost the equivalent of having to require your Windows machine to be domain joined, right? So when you think about it, I as an end user, I know that I need to get access to all of these different types of enterprise apps. So from a Workspace ONE experience, our experience is, hey, you want to get access to these enterprise apps, we have a great Workspace ONE end user application. It'll give you the catalog. It'll show you what your organization has made available to you. I could give you a branded experience, and then from there, you could access any of those applications. Having said that, you and I both know that there's certain applications that have really sensitive data, whether it's Salesforce or a payroll application or all of these things. So I, perhaps as an administrator, I need to decide at which point am I going to require that a device enroll in an additional level of management. So for example, within Workspace ONE, I could say, hey, Salesforce, if you want to access Salesforce through a browser experience, you can get access to that even if you're not managed. You don't have a profile installed onto your device. At the point, though, at which you say, I want to install the native mobile app, and we know these native mobile apps cache a certain level of data on the device, I'm going to say you need to enroll in management. But the goal is, the reason why we call this adaptive management is because we've just invested a lot into the experience so that it doesn't feel overbearing to the end user. When the user decides, hey, I want that Salesforce native mobile app, we say, hey, that's great. We need to install what we call the Workspace Services profile on your device. You install it, and you can now get access to that Salesforce native mobile app. But there's benefits to the end user, because once they install that native mobile app, they get that OneTouch Mobile single sign-on experience that we just talked about. But the whole goal is, hey, there are certain apps that I, as an end user, I can get access to without installing management. But then there's going to be certain apps, once you want them, I need you to install management. But our goal has been just make that experience really nice and seamless for the end user. So we've talked about a lot of kind of end user capabilities. Let's kind of now focus on a few really IT security capabilities that are super important. And the one that we're finding just a lot of organizations have a lot of interest in is conditional access. And conditional access, many of you have probably heard some form of this word, conditional access, contextual access, or something like that. Really the goal is, what are the conditions under which I can access resources? And the way we look at those conditions are kind of across 4 key areas. We look at user information. Who are you? What group are you in? Are you in the marketing department, the sales department? Based on that information, then what type of device are you coming in from? What's the state of that device? Are you, for example, managed already? Are you on a device that has a profile installed on it? What applications are you trying to get access to? And then finally, what location are you from? Are you coming in from? Now, why is that so important? Well, now think about all of the powerful policies that I can create by looking at all of this information. I can now say, hey, Camilo just came in, and he wants to access Salesforce from his device. Now, I checked, because I have that device managed, it's not jailbroken, it's not rooted, that's great. But Camilo's coming in from Starbucks. It's an untrusted network. I, as an administrator, can say, if Camilo comes in and wants to access Salesforce from an untrusted network, I'm going to ask him for a second factor of authentication. So we can do a lot of things around these policies that are super powerful, really designed to kind of secure that access and make sure that IT has really the flexibility that they need to enable access to various different types of resources. But the whole goal is a very kind of flexible access control layer that's been built in Workspace ONE that can support the various needs that IT may have. So then the final area is on multi-factor authentication. And within Workspace ONE, we invested in a technology that we call VMware Verify for 2-factor authentication. And really, this is all designed around having a super simple, easy to use mobile push option for end users. So if I'm on my Mac and I decide, hey, I want to go to whatever website, Concur or application, and IT has said you need that second factor, I'll look at my phone, it sent me an alert saying, do you approve access to that application. So that's the second factor, it's mobile push technology. So that's built into Workspace ONE. Having said that, we understand that there are many organizations out there that have really strong investments in other authentication options, whether it's RSA or others, so we support those as well. But the whole idea is to have a really simple base by which we can have that second factor of authentication and get that additional level of security. So hopefully that gave you a feel for, within Workspace ONE, at a kind of very high level before we dive deeper in the sessions that are to come, of how we're bringing identity management and mobility management together within Workspace ONE. But I've always believed that seeing is believing. Camilo is going to come up. We're going to do a live demo to kind of show you some of the capabilities of what we just talked about across conditional access, the end user experience. I think it'll make it a bit more real than looking at my slides. So we'll hand it over to Camilo.
Thank you. So, as a start, I really want to guide you guys through, give you a short demo of what an end user experience looks like. So as an end user, I mean, this is going to be a pretty simple demo. One of the really nice things about how we demo this solution is that at a really high level, if you don't understand what's going on in the background, it really seems just like another instance of, hey, I'm logging into an application, but it really is the simplicity of it that makes it, it's really the beauty behind it. So as an end user, one of the things we want to facilitate is be able to announce or give the information of what it is we have access to in a single pane of glass. Any type of application, whether it be, again, a mobile application that you've deployed through an AMM, such an AirWatch, a SaaS application that you've configured through a federation provider, whether it be VIDM, which is Workspace ONE, or any other third-party identity provider, or even if you use any virtualized applications via Citrix or Horizon, be able to display and get access to the same applications through the same unified application catalog. So as an end user, all you really need to be aware of or get access to is a single application that's available through the application catalog in iOS or Android, or even Mac and Windows devices. Now you can change the access control into the catalog itself to be able to challenge for any type of different multi-factor or single-factor authentication. But once you get access to any of these, the catalog itself, then you can sort of customize the experience based on the application that those end users are trying to access. So for starters, we have different levels of application. Every application requires a certain level of security. So you can sort of cater how those users are being challenged when they try to access applications that require elevated levels of security. Now, we mentioned once you're in the catalog, the thing that we want to maintain as uniform as possible is that once you've identified what the user is and identified that the device is compliant with security, is we want to provide a single touch access to any type of application. So for example, if we were to open a virtualized desktop, it should kick us directly into the Horizon. Let me see if we can configure that. Would kick us in, directly to the Horizon client. So we have to configure that. And a similar experience would be if we were to open anything such any SaaS application through the default platform browser. Now, the thing that we've noticed coming from AirWatch is that most end users, whenever they use their mobile devices, they don't want to rely on having to open a web application when there's a native application available through the App Store. It usually provides a much better experience, but the biggest driver of it is that they want to maintain the same single-click access to any one of those type of applications, and that's usually where the challenge comes into place, right? When you take an application such as a platform such as iOS or Android, most of the applications that you download for the App Store are pretty much configured to work as silos. So a single sign-on solution that might work within one application won't be able to share the same token or access sessions with another application that you would download to the same device. So we really have to get creative into how we're able to bridge that gap and create a solution that would allow you to access any application without the use to have it manually enter your passwords. So once you have a managed device, you can download Salesforce through the App Store or through the Workspace ONE catalog. And the first time you open that application, Salesforce, for example, supports something that we call app config. So app config as an EMM solution allows us to pre-configure certain user and server parameters. So in this case, we've automatically configured the tenant URL, so there's no need to memorize your company's tenant URL. We've already done that for you. And with regards to, you might have already missed it, with regards to the actual authentication process, once you've directed the Salesforce application to the right tenant URL, we'll redirect you to the Workspace ONE solution to challenge the user for credentials. And the actual credentials are already taken care of through what we've provisioned to the device through EMM. And without really any interaction or major interaction by the end user, they're right away given access to this Salesforce account. Now, what we try to do is to maintain that experience as consistent as possible across all of the different applications. So for certain applications that might not support type that correctly. So certain applications that don't support app config, such as your Office 365 applications, it does require you to enter in your corporate email address. But after that point, most SaaS applications today do have some form of auto-discovery that automatically discover Workspace ONE as the federation provider for those applications. And again, take you to the same federation authentication process in the back end. Again, same experience from the end user, no need to enter any credentials, no need to manually enter any passwords. And we're still able to maintain the same level of trust where we verify that this is the compliant device and make sure the device is compliant before ever provided any access. So let me walk you through where the configuration of these different policies happen. So there's two different platforms really coming together to provide that experience. And this is really where identity and mobility really come together to provide a simple experience when it comes to accessing all those applications on the mobile device. So from one end, since from a mobility standpoint, most of the time we're dealing with several different types of platforms, we really need an identity platform that's able to account for all those different platforms, all the different applications, and all the different authentication levels that are required to meet those use cases. So flexibility as to how you challenge and authenticate those end users in each one of those use cases is key here. So what we've done is in our identity provider platform, we've created really an authentication policy engine that allows you to meet each one of those use cases dynamically and without having to statically create a one-size-fits-all type of solution. So as you can see here, we can create different sets of authentication policies that can meet each one of those use cases. And we could create authentication policies that are cater for each one of the use cases, whether it be based on what network range you're authenticating from. Again, you can give different level of access, whether you're coming from the corporate trusted network or from your public untrusted cafe network. We can validate what type of platform you're coming from. Again, each different platform will be able to support a different type of authentication. And it's really important to be able to take advantage of what authentication method is the best for each one of those platforms. We can read into that context from an identity perspective and supply that device with the base authentication method, whether it be an EMM profile or a user certificate that we can supply directly through the EMM solution via AirWatch. Now, once we identify where the device is coming from and what type of device it is, then we can try to formulate how we're going to challenge that user to be able to access that specific application. So what this platform allows us to do is to really select from any one of the different built-in authentication methods that are created by default within the solution itself. And the beauty of it is that you can select any one of those. Let's say we want to challenge for password, and you can mix and match any of those factors whenever it makes sense to create your own flavor of multi-factor authentication or step of authentication depending on the application that you're trying to access. Now, this isn't limited to any authentication method that's integrated or available by default within VIDM itself. We can actually integrate that with any third-party identity providers, any third-party MFA solutions, and create a specific authentication method that we can then include in line with any of these authentication policies. Now, as a fallback method, in many cases, you want to be able to challenge the device for the best available or best user experience available authentication method. But in many cases, if that's not possible, you can always fall back to a less secure or less ideal in terms of user experience, such as making your end user manually enter credentials. Now, part of the authentication method is being able to check with your endpoint security solutions such as AirWatch whether the device that is authenticating is managed and is compliant with any security policies for your company. So as part of the security authentication policies that you create within VIDM, you can check in real time and inline with a solution such as AirWatch if that specific device is authenticating is actually compliant. And you get a lot of flexibility as to how you define whether a device is compliant or not. I mean, some companies will have a much more strict definition of a device being compliant, whether having a passcode or encryption enabled is enough. Some others might go as far as being able to have, let me authenticate here. Sorry. So let's go through the process of maybe creating a sample compliance policy. And the nice thing about AirWatch is it allows you to create policies that are specific to each platform. So each device has specific parameters that are able to define whether the device is compliant or not. And we can check we can really meet 90% or plus most of the use cases when it comes to checking device compliance for most companies today. And most companies are really what they're looking to see is the device is rooted, is encryption, has it been enabled, and does the device itself have a passcode enabled with a passcode enforced before they're able to access the device itself. So we can say if the passcode is not present on the device, we can flag the device as being non-compliant, and we can actually notify the end user on how to rectify this non-compliant violation. And we can actually notify the end user and his manager of this incident. And then we can actually assign it to specific groups of users. So we've seen that a lot of companies, the compliance, the level of compliance can vary between different devices across organizations. And that can vary specifically how the devices are being used for what purpose and what type of information they're accessing within the company. Some users might require a higher level of assurance than others within the same organization. Now, once we've activated one of these policies, again, VIDM, whenever the device tries to authenticate into any SaaS application, we'll check in real time with AirWatch the status of the device. But now, these are the compliance policies that are available by default within AirWatch. But the nice thing is that we not only want to supply AirWatch as an endpoint solution, right? We want to make AirWatch more of a platform where you want to integrate different systems or different mobile threat analysis systems that you might have available organization and feed all that information into AirWatch that allow you to have a much granular definition of what a compliant device is. So we are partnered with a couple of different mobile threat analysis partners that have a much more granular type of access of information on mobile devices. And they're able to dynamically flag each one of the devices within your organization. So we have a pretty extensive REST API through each one of those partners are able to verify what type of devices have been enrolled for a specific user, and then identify what the current threat level is with one of those users. And based on that, we can make decisions whether an end user should be given access to a specific SaaS application, native mobile application, or even internal virtualized application through a platform again, such as Horizon or Citrix. Not sure if anybody has any questions with the different screens that we went through. Anything that you guys would want me to revisit? Yep.
Yeah, I saw ADFS drop down as one of your options for authentication.
Yep.
Can you walk through how that would look from a user perspective? I assume that that's somehow redirected to ADFS for
Correct.
authentication.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, we have many different third-party authentication options. I wanted to see kind of how that looks from
So from a user perspective, again, we can, oh, sorry. So the question is, one of the options in the authentication policies is to use a third-party identity provider. In this case, we have an ADFS system integrated into the solution. So how would that affect the end user experience? So it does have some effect on the user experience. It gives you flexibility to sort of attain for having different environments that might be federated. This is especially important when you try to incorporate external users or part-time users that are being authenticated with an outside domain. So if you want a part-time partner that needs access to Office 365 tenant that's federated within your organization, then you can create a specific domain for those users and authenticate with an external IDP. So essentially, you would be redirecting to an external identity provider. And that's not only for external identity providers. You can also use any type of MFA appliance that might be authenticating via Radius. So any appliance that supports like generic Radius or any solution that supports SAML integration could be patched into the same authentication policies. What else you wanted to add?
So hopefully that gave you a feel for really the power of bringing these two things together. You know, at VMware, identity management is a kind of a critical piece of Workspace ONE, but we really feel this all kind of gets unlocked, like the power of that enterprise security and that consumer level of simplicity when we pair that with mobility management. So probably a little bit of a kind of a different approach than perhaps others that you've seen here at Cloud Identity Summit, but hopefully this kind of gave you a feel that when we do bring those things together, it just really unlocks all of these different use cases in a much easier way. So walking that end user through, coming in, installing the Workspace ONE app, accessing certain types of applications, and then unlocking additional access to applications when the device goes under management. So all of this happens because we're bringing identity management and mobility management together. So hopefully that gave you kind of a good view into Workspace ONE and kind of what it is, bringing the power of AirWatch and identity management together to deliver this new platform. So with that, the next session is going to be on security in Workspace ONE. Camilo is going to be diving deep into that, and then after that, a specific focus on Office 365. So we hope that you can join us for those, although we know you also have other options that you have available. But with that, we have about 7 minutes for any questions that you may have. So feel free to ask any questions. Go ahead.
So if I've invested in another IAM solution, an Okta or whatever, and I integrated with the ADFS, what about
You want to?
that space? It has all my policies already.
Yeah. So a lot of the we've gotten a lot of requests from customers, specifically, usually customers that have a solution such as AirWatch, or they have some other VMware products, and they want to integrate a lot of what we offer with regards to mobile single sign-on, compliance status check through our Workspace ONE solution, but they already have an existing identity provider. I mean, most enterprises today do have some sort of identity provider, and what we've done with most of those is we are able to integrate sort of mainly as an authenticator provider. So you maintain your federation of your SaaS applications, whether it be through your Oktas, your Ping, and you're able to offload the authentication requests of mobile devices to a solution such as Workspace ONE. So what we want to try to avoid doing is disrupting any type of work that's already been done with the existing identity provider as much as possible, but be able to add our added value inline by simply making a simple switch in the redirection. Some solutions have a better way to handle those. Some solutions would allow you to differentiate the type of traffic that's incoming and make those redirects happen, while some others are a bit more restricted as to how the redirect will happen. It really depends on what current IDP solution you have in place.
Any other questions?
The Authenticator app? So the Authenticator app, are you referring to, so the VMware Verify app that we have at the moment, I don't believe there are any plans, I guess, in the near future to support FIDO. It's really to support one-time use token, SMS, or push notification access, sort of a built-in MFA solution, but I don't think as of now any FIDO compliance is being added into it.
We'll have Vikas back there, who's our product manager, may have additional comments.
So, the single sign-on that we just saw was not based on the app. It was based on the specific technique that we're using to transport the certificate from the device to the backend and verify that certificate is the right device name. So that will continue to work. Now, we manage devices where you still have to enter the username and password. We are looking at the roadmap supporting FIDO UAS, so we can have the password from unmanaged devices.
Well, we thank you all for joining us. We're going to be around. It's not like we're leaving anywhere, but I know they're recording these sessions as well. So we definitely very much appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you could stay for our next 2 sessions. Thank you.